So to frame the demo, I always like to think about the journey of records management when you're getting started in three different phases. First, around defining the retention schedule, categories of processes that the organization will follow, and configuring those in whatever technology is used. Second, around classifying the content, making sure that we establish a good records baseline where we actually place those content, those record categories into all of the different documents, emails, and other files that need it. And then finally, being able to execute on those processes and make sure that they're being followed appropriately and that the appropriate trails and proof of the process being followed are stored. So let's get started. I'll follow the demo on those three steps. Let's get started with defining your retention schedule. First of all, identifying the applicable regulations is typically where most of our customers start. And then once you've identified which are the regulations you need to keep, they're not necessarily, by the way, record regulations. There are, of course, some of those that are necessary, but a lot of times, the example I often use with customers that are less well versed in this area is that, for example, if you have an employment regulation that, for example, has fair hiring practices or appropriate compensation requirements. If you ever need to prove that you're meeting that regulation, you're gonna need evidence, and you're gonna need to be able to have the right evidence to be able to determine that, whether that is your interview notes or that is your personnel action forms. All of those things have to be stored, categorized, and make sure that they're protected, so that you can show that. And so identifying the applicable regulations, our compliance score solution, which I won't demo today, I won't go into those details. It's a great one for being able to identify your regulations, identify the controls. We already have a lot of regulations in there, and we're significantly accelerating that. And you can even bring your own regulation that we might not have and make sure that you're meeting it in the appropriate way, and use that as a way of risk management. And then where customers tend to go next is to make sure that you create the policies and procedures that you're going to follow, and therefore your retention schedule. Once a customer has defined, or you're helped your customers define which are going to be the processes, then creating those in Microsoft 365 Records Management will be very easy. Let me flip over to my demo really quick and show you. So I'm in the new Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, and I can go here to the catalog and quickly see that our catalog is our new home where all of our solutions are getting published. Can quickly see my records management solution. I can see a little bit of an overview for it, and I'll go ahead and just open that solution right away. And I'll skip for the overview for 1 second and get started with our file plan, which is our essentially our retention schedule in the cloud, where we help our customers define which are going to be the categories of retention, and for how long and what process each one of those will follow. This is, by the way, a section where if your customer already has a retention schedule, maybe in an Excel file or maybe in a third-party system, you can quickly import it by using a CSV template that we will provide you. Now, if you need to create a new category, that is very easy using the creating label wizard. And this, we use retention labels as the foundation, as the building block for our records management solution. So I'll go ahead and give a quick name for my label. I'm going to talk about European Union contracts in this case. And then I have the ability of establishing some of those file plan descriptors or metadata that, as I have a very large file plan, will actually help me manage the details of that file plan. So I'll go ahead and select my different file plan descriptors, including which provision or citation this label will be covering. Then when I click next, I actually have a lot of options in terms of how this label will behave when it comes to enforcing the restrictions on the places that it's been applied, as well as for how long it'll do it. So I'll leave, as you can see, I could change for how long the content is retained or whether if it's not retained at all. Sometimes we have some of those privacy related regulations, for example, that just ask us to make sure that we delete before a certain time. So, a maximum of 10 years, I could do that and just saying don't retain. But I'm going to keep this as retained. Contracts I need to make sure stick around. And then choose what I want to do for how long. I'll leave it for 7 years. That's fine. And then what do I want to do when the 7 years are up? I could choose to do nothing or to choose to delete automatically, which might be appropriate. But in this case, I'm going to choose to trigger a disposition review to be able to show you that experience. I'm going to set Adele as the person to be able to review this when it's done. And I can even choose when the period of the 7 years starts counting. I can choose from when the content was created, modified, or even labeled, or I can even choose a custom event, an aspect that lets you be able to tailor the processes to specifically the organization that you're working with. For example, an employee leaving the organization, they might have a third party personnel management solution like a Workday or some other HRMS. And you can use this to be able to trigger an event from that other system and just trigger then the retention of everything that has already been labeled by it. For now, I'm going to keep it as created, and I'm going to look at the last option, which is whether I want to classify the content as a record. Classifying it as a record, as you can imagine, will make the content immutable so that it can be edited once I apply that label. And if I leave it as don't classify as a record, I won't be able to delete it. It'll still be around, it'll be preserved, but it will still be able to be edited by anybody. In this case, I'm going to say contract, I don't want to be editable. So I'm going to declare them as a record. I'll click next, and then the last one, I'll just create that label. So just like that, if I flip back to my presentation, that is as simple as it is to create your different retention schedule and be able to define your categories. Super easy, and we think all of our customers will be able to do that, and we already see lots of them doing it at scale. Now let's talk about classification and classifying all your content based on your categories. Now, our customers need to be able to classify content across Microsoft 365 and their third-party data. And they're looking for us to help with intelligent and automated classification so that we can really help with that data explosion. Because if I even classify everything I have today, I will already be behind the curve in terms of the information that has been generated since I started classifying. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about ensuring immutability while enabling collaboration. Now, before I jump back into the demo, let me address in a second the third-party data. I won't go into the demo of our connectors right away, just in the sake of time, but our data connectors provide an amazing way for you to be able to bring that third-party data into Microsoft 365 and ingest it in a way that you can use all of our compliance solutions to discover and govern and protect that data. So for example, we already have several connectors out there, such as your page for Facebook or LinkedIn, and we have the Bloomberg chat if you have any of your customers who are trading on securities. And for example, using Bloomberg as an example, you can take all that data and bring it in and use it to be able to make sure that you're meeting the appropriate retention requirements that you need to keep those communications from the people communicating on the Bloomberg terminal. Now let's talk a little bit about how we can actually get this information classified. Let me go back to my demo. So we have this EU contract and that EU contracts category I created, there are a few ways I could make this available to customers. The simplest one is being able to publish that label. So if I click publish the label, I'll go ahead and confirm that this is the only label that I can publish. I can choose where I want to publish it. In this case, I'm going to choose just SharePoint for now. Or I could choose to publish it, as you can see, also to email or OneDrive accounts, all of them, so that it's available. And I'm going to give that policy a name. I do that. And then when I hit publish, that might take a few minutes. So I'll go back to one that I had already published. But what you will see is that that makes it available for manual labeling for our customers. So let me flip over to my information worker view. And in this other view, I can see that I have my Mark 8 project team contracts document library. And so when I select, for example, my Ireland contract, I see that right built into SharePoint, where I'm used to working with files, I can see this apply retention label area. And when I select it, I can see my EU contracts label that I had already published beforehand. And it'll indicate me that I can retain it for 7 years. And if I hover over it, it'll have the description that I have set up for our end users. So I'll go ahead and select that. And if I click away from it, you'll notice that this gets this lock icon, which indicates that it is a record that I'm storing in here. So labels that are not records won't create that. So this is an easy way for end users to know that this item will behave differently because it is a record. Now, let me zoom out of that. And, this is great, but obviously labeling manually one by one is not a great way to scale. So another opportunity, when the first way that we'll talk about automating the application of labels, is setting default, whether it's that on a library, or you can do these even on folders. So I can come in here and go to the library settings and select apply label to items in this list or library. And from here, I'll be able to come in and select my EU contracts label. And I can check off the box of applying the label to all the existing items. When I click save, what I'll notice is that label will get propagated to all the items currently in the library, as well as any others that I drag and drop or I create in here. So automatically, this is an easy way to automatically apply a label by being able to tell your end users, hey, just by moving it to that other library called contracts, it'll automatically declare it as a record. Easier to do. Doesn't have to go to another system. The library doesn't even have to be in a different site than the one that they're collaborating in, right? So really easy. It could even be a folder. And if we wanted to, I can come in here and show that column of retention label and apply that. And we'll see that I can actually see which retention label has been applied. By the way, this of adding the retention label is a great trick. If you're using Microsoft Teams, you can do these on the library view that it's used on Teams, and then all your end users will be able to see the retention label on Teams. Today, unfortunately, you can't edit that from the Teams interface yet, but that definitely helps to be able to view it. Now, let me go back to the Compliance Center really quick. So back to the Compliance Center, we know that approach of, automatically by allocation might not scale. So let's see what other options we have to automatically apply the label to content. If I go to auto applying this label, which is my other option besides publishing it, I'll be able to choose which labels to auto apply. I'm going to select only this label, the contract one. And then I can choose of 3 different types of automatic application that happen on the system beyond the one of location based. The first one is about applying the content to sensitive information types. So if I click next in here, if you're familiar with our sensitive information types, we have over 100 different information types that you can select from, and you can even add your own. And we've created them in groupings that look for these patterns within the content. You can create even your own regular expression that's going to go look for something. In this case, I could do something like, hey, France financial data to try to find contracts, but I might have a contract that doesn't have a credit card number or a debit card number, so it probably is not a great one. Fit in this case. If I was looking for like PII or privacy related, it might be a good one. So I'll go ahead and look at the second option. Our second option is to be able to match content that contains specific words, phrases, or properties. Here, what we can basically do, and this crowd is probably one of the most experts at this, I'm sure, which is to be able to use our search engine across Microsoft 365 to match certain content. So we can use a KQL query to match content across the different workloads. So for example, if my organization had created content types to match with all of my contracts, I could leverage that to automatically detect that anything that has a content type of contract should get this label. Now, unfortunately, at Contoso, which is this sample, we haven't done that. So that option won't help me. So the third option I have available is matching content through a trainable classifier, which is our newest approach to automatic classification. So trainable classifiers, which are currently on public preview and you can try, not only come with some out-of-the-box classifiers that we at Microsoft have created the model for you, like resumes, for example, which might be very applicable to retention, or you can go and create your own classifier. So for example, at Contoso, I already have an admin that has gone out and trained a classifier on some of our contracts. So you can start with as little as a couple hundred. You only need 50 initial positive samples and then a mix of positives and negatives to train the model and fine tune it. And once you do that, you'll be able to have a trainable classifier ready to be able to be used for auto-applying retention. And this actually leverages, it generates a machine learning model behind the scene without your customers having to do this. And you're able to leverage it to auto apply across. So I'm going to use that one. That seems like a great one. And I'm going to give that policy a name, choose the locations. Again, I'm going to choose only SharePoint in this case, because that's where I have my samples. And then I hit auto apply. Now we do have the notice that it may take up to 7 days. So I've done this in my other environment ahead of time. So let me flip over to that one and show you how this works. So in here, for example, you can see I have a document that doesn't really say that it's a contract or anything like that. But if you start to read through it, it's clearly that it is all about establishing a legal binding between entities. And so I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I'm now into my document library of my project, Mark8 project team. And I'm going to upload that Brussels proposals that I had. So I'll select that and I'll click open. And I will shorten the sequence here a little bit just for you. I'm going to flip over to where it's already been applied. It may take a while, but it'll automatically apply that classification. And if I click on it, I can see that it's applied my retention label of EVU contracts, and I can see that it's a record. Now, one of the things that we at Microsoft are, working hard as part of our records management journey is that we don't want to remove all the amazing collaboration and productivity features that are part of 365 to be able to meet records management. So what you'll see us do is that we will challenge in some of the areas. We'll toe the line between what meets regulations of records management, but still allows the end users to keep their productivity and make it so that they can easily keep collaborating on things. One of those examples is our records versioning capability. where I can come in here, and as you see, I have a record status. And that record status I could select and unlock. And what that does is it basically, because I just uploaded this contract, it was not ready yet to be the ultimate version. It's preserved the version that was declared as a record behind the scenes for me. And I can now make updates to this contract if I wanted to. And when I want, I can come back and lock it back again. And what this will do is if we look at the version history, it will actually create copies of it behind the scenes and preserve those and be able to tell me which of those versions were declared as records. And so this way we're looking for opportunities for our customers to be able to flip between, being able to create a new version of, say, a standard operating procedure, and you've already made that link available to everyone and you don't want to redistribute it. No need to create a copy and download and all of that. You can do that right from the user experience by just unlocking and relocking the record. So that was a little quick overview on all the different ways that you can classify and be able to apply content, based on your categories. Of course, use partners, I'm sure, can come up with a lot more approaches into doing this. And you can extend our out-of-the-box functionality by using things such as flow or custom scripts or all of that to be able to apply that kind of categorization. So finally, let's move into executing the retention and disposition actions. One of the things that it's key for this is as the content is being stored and all of its enforcement, it's happening, our customers need to make sure that things are being disposed appropriately. And before they are disposed, that they actually have the right approvals for them to be disposed. And then they can be able to see that those were appropriately destroyed and keep a record of that, keep a record of the record being destroyed. So let's take a look at what we can do to help that. Let me flip over to my other machine where we have my email, and I can see that I have received an email letting me know that there are some items ready for review on the EU contracts label. So I can go ahead and click on this link and land on the disposition area of my records management solution. Here, I'm able to see a couple of new things. First of all, you can see that we have a label called Asia Pacific contract that is of a different type. It says record disposed rather than pending disposition like a EU contract one does. This new type is part of our proof of disposal feature that we are rolling out, and it will show up for every record label that has an automatic deletion. And so even if you don't have a disposition review, labels will start to show up here if they are doing if they are a record label that's doing automatic deletion, and we will be storing that proof of disposal. Now, let's go into my EU contract one, because that's the one that I will receive the notice about. So if I go into the EU contract one, I can see there's a lot of things pending disposition. It looks like this first one, which I'll tackle first, the Luxembourg contract that was in a PowerPoint form that we had created. And so I know this one's okay. It's been long enough. I'll just enter a quick comment, which will be stored in the auditing events and will be available for me later. And I'll just click on dispose. And just like that, it's very easy to, I didn't need to, do anything else. It has been disposed. I could have chosen to extend it or relabel it as well. And then once it's been deleted, it'll show up on my disposed items list where I'll have my Luxembourg contract, as you can see. When we'll store, the file is gone, but we'll be keeping the metadata to be able to show you not only when it got deleted, but what was the comment, what were the details of that approval that happened. And this is similar data that we will be keeping even if the document is automatically deleted and it was declared as a record with a record label. Now, all of this needs to have a good audit trail. So if we click over to our audit solution, I can actually show you how there's a lot of activities that we track as part of audit. I'm going to select just a handful of them as a sample and go ahead and click search. And what you'll notice is that I can see all of the different audit trails whenever somebody unlocked a record, whenever somebody changed a label. All of those actions that are taken, whether by admins or users related to records management, are audited and are all part of our audit log. And even if you have a third-party SIEM system, or you pipe all of these events out, you can leverage our advanced auditing capabilities to be able to access all of those events. Now, this is awesome, but as a records manager, I need to be able to see the information across my tenant. And that's been a little bit hard before. And that's where we've introduced the data classification horizontal in the Compliance Center. And the data classification gives you the overview, an at-a-glance view of everything. But it also has two very powerful sections that go across your tenant to show you information. First is the Content Explorer, where I can select a retention label like my EU contract one and be able to see where the content is across the different areas of the tenant. So I can go inside SharePoint and let's say this Contoso Finance one. And once I'm inside of them, I can even see the file that has it along with its metadata. So as a records management manager, this is super powerful. I don't have to leave the Compliance Center to be able to traverse the tenant and find where the content is appropriately labeled. And if I'm curious about the labeling activity and what's been happening, I can click on Activity Explorer and filter by a certain retention label, and then be able to see all of the activity that's happening, whether the files, the label was changed, the files are being created, what kind of activities I'm seeing within this. And so that gives me a ton of visibility into what is happening and have a single pane of glass in the Compliance Center. So with that, we'll go back to my presentation. And we've gone through the demo of how you can define, classify, and execute. Hopefully this gave you good high-level overview of the records management functionalities on Microsoft 365. Now,